They stay vigilant so we can sleep peacefully. They stand guard so we can be at rest. They put their lives on the line so we can live ours without fear. But who looks after the hero's heart? Welcome to Hero's Heart with Chaplain Dan Middlebrooks, President and CEO of Chaplaincy Care Incorporated, which according to Psalm 28:7, focuses on protecting the hearts of our heroes, our first responders. Learn more at chaplaincycare.org. And now your host, Chaplain Dan Middlebrooks.
Hey, thanks for joining me again on Hero's Heart. Last time when we talked, we began to start looking at the F in SAF talk, SAF talk. And the first part of the F recognizes us in reference to the pitch that we use and the inflections that we have when we speak the words to our spouse, especially when we're trying to create that safe communication after sharing of an event that's just happened, because our spouses really want to know what's happening on the inside of us, how we're doing. And so this is a way by which we're able to talk and to create a conversation that allows couples to draw together rather than draw apart. So the very first part about that F was to focus on the pitch. But this next part, the second part of the focus is to focus on our preparation for our presentation. Now, this is not like standing up and doing a PowerPoint presentation to your spouse of this is how I feel and these are the pictures and oh, let's watch this video of cats. It's not anything like that. But we have to understand, because I love the old saying, a rolling stone gathers no moss, and a closed mouth gathers no foot. But the problem with that is that if you always keep your mouth closed and you're not sharing, you're not talking, you're not communicating, you're not connecting, then it's going to cause more issues than anything else. We have to be willing to take the risk to open our mouth, even sometimes when we don't say things right. We begin to learn how to say things right, because there really is a difference between hearing and listening. Now, in the communication part, it's all about what we say, but it's about, again, 7% of the words is what we use. Over 93% are other things. About 30-some-odd% is the inflections that we use, and then close to 67%, a lot of that is going to be our body language. But how we learn, remember that the hearing is just simply what I call the gathering of information. That's the facts, the figures. That's kind of what a lot of you as officers, when you're taking down a report, what happened, where were you, what did you see, what did you hear? It's just kind of gathering the facts. It's just putting them down in what I call a report conversation. We may sometimes do a data dump for our spouse. This happened, this happened, this happened. Okay, but that's a little bit of what I call the facts part. See, that's about hearing. But when you're listening, because it comes back into it, is when we're hearing facts, we don't hear anything else. But if we're listening, we're going to be able to respond both intellectually, physically, emotionally, then to the message that we hear. That's what you want to be able to connect with your spouse, is you don't want them just to hear your words. You want them to listen. You want them to be able to not only understand what's coming, but to be able to see what is the emotions that are behind it, even if sometimes we're trying to figure out what the emotions are. So there are some capabilities of being able to really learn how to communicate and to prepare for a conversation that we're going to have with our spouses. And it seems funny that you have to kind of prepare, but ladies and gentlemen, when you've gone through a traumatic experience, now remember, law enforcement, fire and rescue, military, security, EMS, medical, we go through stuff. When there's a bad day, our bad day trumps anybody else's, sort of in the civilian sector. Because of what that means many times is that we're actively engaged in something that is a life and death situation oftentimes. Not just conflict and aggravations, but it can go south really, really fast. And so there are things that we have to begin to prepare as we start going into the conversation, because our spouses want to connect with us. And so in order to shed light on how we prepare, I want to give you an acronym. Now, I love my acronyms because it's easier for me to remember stuff. Now, remember the ART acronym that was used in the pitch was about the active reflective talking. That's kind of how we're engaged in that. But this one right here about the focus on our preparation. In order to provide us a conduit or a source of light I want you to remember this acronym, SOLAR. SOLER. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, let's go into. I'm not going to go deep into them, but I'm going to hit these kind of superficially, and then later on in different other episodes, we'll kind of unpack them a little bit more because of some of the other issues that I can constantly hear from our first responders that are situations that they go through every single day. But let's go ahead and break it down. What does the S actually stand for? That simply means to squarely face your spouse. I mean, what I teach couples, especially when I'm doing marriage enrichment or even pre-marriage counseling, I do a lot of that for our first responders to engage in helping them understand the culture that they're getting into, as well as the communication and the dialogues that they're going to have. But here's what I tell couples to do is to be able to sit, if they can, kind of knee to knee, and sit squarely facing the person. Now, there's some things that I want you to realize for that is because when you're facing them, you're not going to be distracted by the stuff that's around you. Make sure you don't put your spouse right to where you can see the TV. That conversation is not going to go anywhere except for down. Trust me on that one. So when you're sitting, just sit in a place where you're looking at each other and literally look at each other. But here's what I want you to be able to start looking at. When you simply sit squarely to face the person, I want you to focus on the eyes. If there's one thing about the pandemic that seems to be progressive all the way around in situations in our life and the use of the mask during these times, it covers our face. And I had a first responder that said, I just don't smile anymore because no one can see the smile even when I'm trying to communicate. And I said, dude, you just need to keep smiling because people can see a smile in your eyes faster than they can see it on your face. Because the face may simply lie, but the eyes do not. The eyes truly are the windows of the soul. And so when you're looking at your spouse, I want you to look at him or her in their eyes, because the eyes will be able to tell you what's happening inside, if they're understanding, if they're connecting, if they're hurting, if they're angry. We all have eyes. I have eyes that go hard when I'm really getting ready to get mad, and that's just an understanding that if I'm talking with someone, I have to visually tell myself, keep your eyes soft, keep your eyes soft. And it helps me because when I'm sitting squarely in front of my wife and talking to her, I want to look into her eyes, not just simply see her face, because I'm going to miss something if I'm not careful. Second thing, the O. The S was squarely face the person. The O in solar is to open your posture. That means you're not sitting there with your legs crossed, with your arms crossed, turned to the side. Just be open. Hey, one thing I shared in another episode I want to remind us of is that not just in the open posture itself, ladies and gentlemen, keep your hands open as well. Because when you keep your hands open, it's hard to start going into a tense and a protective posture. When we start closing our hands, that is symbolic of our hearts and our spirits closing as well. Guess what? You can see that in your spouse. When their hands start closing up, so are they. And you can keep knocking on the door, but baby, there is nobody home. So you've got to keep that open posture when you come into that. Also, the L in solar is to lean toward the person. Now, don't go back and forth because that'll just make the person seasick. But when someone is saying something and you lean toward them, what you're saying to me is very important, and I want to capture every word of it. I don't want to miss anything. Counselors, when they want to make sure that they're hearing their client, they're going to lean toward them because they want to make sure they don't miss something. When we're talking to our spouse and we kind of lean toward them, we're saying, I value what you're telling me. When we get down on a child's level and kind of lean toward them, that child feels that they are not only heard, but they're seen, and they want to be able to tell you more. Leaning towards someone allows you to be able to, again, keep that posture open, but it keeps the conversation going because it's saying, that's interesting. Please continue. It really is amazing because you can kind of lean in toward that and be able to grab something, and then if you need to sit back and relax a little bit as they keep going, but different times as you're leaning in, it's something that's stirring you or something that you know is stirring them. How do you know that? Hey, watch the eyes, watch the hands. Going back into the E for solar, I'm going to touch back again on the eye contact. Looking toward them, looking away, looking toward them, looking over to the side, looking toward them, looking down. You can do that, but man, it's what you call an emotional roller coaster of what's happening inside of you. Because when we can't look at someone straight, then that means there's a whole lot more going on. I know with interrogators, when they talk about how the eyes move, how they shift, that means that they're lying or they're trying to come up with an idea or something of that nature. To me, just look at the person now. Here's something I really want to reiterate again when you're looking at the eye contact. Keep your eyes soft. Keep your eyes soft. Don't make them hard. Don't make them intense. Don't make them where they're glaring, because you've seen people that have glaring looks. If you don't believe that, just when you get married, just sometimes take a look at your mother-in-law. That would help out right there. That gives you a good example sometimes of glaring, or just when someone cuts you off, or better yet, when you cut them off. You just look back and you have a good example of what a glaring eyes look like, the ones that just kind of cut through you. So keep the eyes soft, and to be able to start allowing, again, the windows of the soul not to be smudged by the expectations or perceptions that you may bring to the table. Let it be just as transparent and as open so that you can listen and be able to hear, and also to be able to share, because when you share, you need to keep your eyes just as soft. So that's the SOLE. What is the R? The R is just relax. Relax while you engage the person. Now, I want you to realize that that's oftentimes hard when we're talking about something that has stirred inside of us, that has caused us sort of an emotional upheaval, whether it's a traumatic scene that we are a part of, or a firefight that we have been in, or a friend of ours being hurt, or whatever it may be. Especially in the life of the first responders, things change every single day, and what we pray for are just boring days. Now, someone say, "Oh, I don't want boring." Yep, you want boring. Boring means that everything is okay and I'm going home. When it gets accentuated in those moments of sheer terror, that's when your training kicks in. That's when what you have been preparing to do, you need to do. But it's not just about having the battle mind that you're going into and the training that's provided for you. You need to be able to step back away from that later on and come back and replace your battle mind to a living mind, to a home mind. One thing that the Army did very well as we were preparing for the war, now remember, since September 11th, it's been war. And so from that point is that we train our soldiers to be able to take a battle mind into the warfare itself. That means making sure you know the operational environment, making sure you know where the enemy is, making sure that you're engaging with him, making sure that you've trained, because you train as you fight, because you're going to fight as you train. And the reason why I want you to realize that is, as you start going into preparing for the conversations of your presentation, of the words that you're going to use to make the conversation safe, it's all about how you practice to make it perfect, how you continue to discipline yourself to be able to do it. I love the story of Joe Frazier, the boxer. My dad was a boxer growing up. He had fast hands. Even in his 50s, he had fast hands. So my brother and I respected him a lot and made sure we stood just out of his reach. But Dad loved boxing. We would sit and we'd watch the different boxers and stuff, and Tyson and George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. I mean, just all kind of things that were out there. But one thing that Joe Frazier said that has always stuck with me about the discipline, he says this. He says, if you cheat yourself in the early morning hours of your training, it will eventually be exposed in the light of the ring. What was he saying? There are no shortcuts in this. There's no, we'll just figure it out as we try it. You need to be able to prepare in your mind and in your heart of how you're going to be able to engage with your spouse, because they're needing to do the exact same thing. After a situation has happened, after a traumatic event has happened, there has to be a time of processing, diffusing, and we use that term not only in a clinical sense, but we need to be able to kind of release that out. We need to be able to relax in one of the safest places that we know, and that's at home with our spouse. And a spouse that begins to understand it's not about nagging, it's not about poking, it's not about asking 1,000 questions. It's about a spouse being able to realize that in the conversation that y'all have agreed on is that y'all will be able to share with one another what is necessary. You've kept the word simple. You've agreed upon the definitions of those words. You begin to focus on the pitch and the inflection that both of you use because you have taken the time to prepare your presentation. Your presentation, this is what happened. I'm okay. You can't go into details, but you sure can talk about what's happening inside of you. Conversation and communication is the lifeblood of any relationship. We need to make sure that we never run dry of that. And it comes from the daily dose of practicing not only what you say, but how you say it, why you say it, and how often you do. Thanks for joining me today on Hero's Heart, and I look forward to talking to you again soon as we begin to start understanding the steps that we take to protect our hearts so that we can protect the hearts of those entrusted to us. I look forward to talking to you soon.
You've been listening to Hero's Heart with Chaplain Dan Middlebrooks, President and CEO of Chaplaincy Care Incorporated. Learn what you can do to protect the hearts of our heroes, our first responders, at chaplaincycare.org.